Hello and welcome back to Financial Madness, where we look at all things personal finance. In the last video, we explored how much you should have saved by now to stay on track for retirement with the average income. But today, we're making it personal. I've created a simple spreadsheet that with just a few simple inputs will calculate your retirement savings target. So without further ado, I'm Kozan from Financial Madness, helping you be better with your money. Pow! Before we dive into the calculator, let's talk about some of the reasons why calculating your retirement income is so important. Number one is that it's better than guessing. Most people have no idea how much they need to retire while maintaining their desired lifestyle, and that's a big problem. Retirement is often overlooked until it is too late. Knowing your target early and planning ahead can make a huge difference. Number two, a clear goal helps you create a realistic savings plan. Understanding your target amount lets you determine how much to save each month and what investment strategy to follow. Number three, it reduces stress and uncertainty. Financial uncertainty is a major source of stress. Having a well-defined retirement plan provides peace of mind and helps ease anxiety about the future. And finally, number four, it helps identify potential shortfalls. By calculating how much you need, you can assess whether you're on track. If not, you'll have the opportunity to adjust, whether that means increasing your savings, modifying your strategy, or delaying retirement. The earlier you start, the better off you'll be in the long run. Now let's dive into the calculator. And while we do that, why don't you dive into this channel and click subscribe? Thanks. Before we begin, I want to emphasize that this tool is not a replacement for professional retirement planning. I'm not a financial advisor, just someone who is passionate about the topic and is excited to share it with you. Think of this calculator as a helpful gauge to assess your progress, but for personalized financial advice, be sure to consult a professional. All right, let's get started. Cool, so here is the calculator. Now, some of my viewers may recognize it from an earlier video I did years ago, but since then I've made several improvements, and plus with my channel growing, I wanted to reintroduce this calculator to newer viewers. Now, the key inputs to look at are spread across options 1 all through 7, so let's go through them one by one. The first question is your current age. I'll be using my details here, so I'm 32 and I'll just put that in here. The next question is at what age would you like to be financially free? I use the term financially free instead of retirement because retirement means different things to different people. Personally, I'd like to step away from my main career by the age of 50 and spend my time exploring passions and perhaps while taking on a part-time job. So I'll enter 50 here. Of course, you can choose whichever age suits your goal. Many people align this with their retirement age. So for example, those with private pensions can currently access them at the age of 55. This is soon to be rising to 57 in 2028, while the state pension age is currently set at 68. Now for a slightly more morbid question, at what age do you expect to live until? Now this is of course a tricky one to predict. So I've just taken the average life expectancy in the UK, which is around about 81, 82. And I've added a buffer for contingency. So I've just put in 86 for now. Now the next set of questions is about your UK state pension. First, what is your state pension age? For most of us, this will be 68. But if you are unsure, click on the link provided to access the official government portal. In just a few clicks, you'll be able to find out exactly what your state pension age is. Next, what is your forecasted state pension amount? This is how much you expect to receive from the government each year in retirement. Now, the government do have a portal to help you fill out this section in, but you will need to sign up. Now, if I remember correctly, I think the sign up process does take a few days as they do mail out the password for security reasons. I remember doing mine years ago and I remember it just wasn't instant. But once you are logged in, you'll be able to see whether you're on track to receive the full state pension. As of today, the full amount is £11,502 per year, and this is the amount I'll put now. Now, the next set of questions is about your private pension. 5A applies if you have a defined contributions pension, and 5B applies if you have a defined benefits pension. If you have both, make sure to fill out both sections. Starting with defined contributions pensions. The first input is your salary. Let's use 38,000 in this example, which is roughly the UK average. Next, if you already have a pension, enter its current value. If you have several pensions, make sure to use the total of these amounts. And if you're just starting, you can just leave it at 0. I'm going to be putting in £10,000, which is roughly what a person in their 30s has in their pension on average in the UK. The next following inputs relate to your contributions and your employer's contributions, both entered as percentages. By law, UK auto-enrolment requires a minimum of 5% from you and 3% from your employer. so I'll use these values here. However, you should adjust them to fit your situation. Next is the expected annual return on your investments. Let's keep this conservative and set it to 6%. And finally, enter the age at which you can access your pension. For private pensions, this will be 57 from 2028 onwards, so I'll use that value here. Once all the inputs are in, the calculator provides two key results. First, the predicted value whilst employed. This is the amount expected to be in your pension by the time you aim to be financially free. In this example, the financial freedom age is 50, and it is at this age the pension is projected to be £122,000. But since I can't access this pension until I am 57, that means my pension has another 7 more years of growth until it gets to the final predicted value, which is expected to be £184,000. Taking a quick step back and understanding what this means, it is basically saying, based on my savings rate and expected annual returns, by the time I turn 57, my pension pot should be around £185,000. Moving on to the second part, which only applies if you have a defined benefits pension. Now, defined benefit pensions are unique in how they are calculated, but the good news is that it is usually straightforward to get a predicted retirement salary from your employer. So do reach out to them for this value. So to complete this section, you'll need to obtain your predicted annual pensions amount from your employer and enter it here. Enter the age at which you can claim your pension, as this may differ from the standard private pension ages of 55, 57. Once entered, the calculator will estimate the total sum of your pension benefits over your lifetime. This is calculated by multiplying your predicted annual pension benefits by the number of years between your pension access age and your expected lifespan. The next section focuses on the lifestyle you want to afford in retirement. I've broken these down into two categories. One, the necessity lifestyle. This covers the bare minimum you need to live comfortably, including essential bills and perhaps one holiday per year. Comfort lifestyle. Now, this is a more ambitious target, allowing you to analyze whether a higher standard of living is achievable. For the necessity lifestyle, I've analyzed the average income required to cover basic expenses. You'll notice I've included mortgage and rent in this calculation, and whether you keep this depends on your circumstances. With more and more retirees still paying rent or paying off mortgages, I've actually left this in for a more realistic estimate. For the comfort lifestyle, I've added some extra expenses to reflect a more aspirational goal, helping us to gauge whether it's feasible to aim for a higher quality of life in retirement. Once all the inputs are in, it's time for the fun part, calculating how much you need for financial freedom. Now, I've broken down the maths into clear steps to help illustrate how we arrive to the final number. Step 1. First, we determine the net monthly and net yearly costs for both your necessity and comfort lifestyles. However, since retirement income is still subject to income tax, we need to work out what the gross yearly amount will be instead. Using the 24/25 taxes, that brings our estimated gross yearly amounts to about $19,000 for necessity and $33,000 for comfort. Step 2. Since we need this amount every year from our financial freedom age until the day we die, we need to multiply this gross yearly amount to account for all the years in between. And this brings us to the total today amount, which comes out to around about £800,000 for necessity. Step 3. As money loses value over time due to inflation, we therefore must adjust for it. The UK's average annual inflation rate is currently 2.82% per year. So factoring this in gives us an inflation adjusted total amount of about 1.1 million for necessity and 1.9 for comfort. Now, I know these numbers might seem intimidating, but don't worry, we're not done yet. Let's keep going and see how achievable this really is. Because step 4, let's not forget we have our state pension. Now, we've already determined that I'm forecasted to receive the full state pension at the age of 68, which currently stands at £11,502 per year. However, that's not the number we'll use in our calculations, because the state pension is also adjusted annually for inflation, but more specifically, it is protected by the triple lock system. Now, the triple lock ensures the state pension increases each year by the highest of the three measures: inflation, measured by the consumer price index, the average earnings growth, or a minimum of 2.5%. For example, the government have already recently announced that the state pension will rise by another £472 in the next tax year, reflecting a 4.1 increase driven by the average earnings growth. For my calculations, I've taken a conservative approach and assumed the state pension increases by the minimum of 2.5% per year. Based on that, my projected state pension amount at the age of 68 is expected to be around £27,979 per year. Over the 18 years I'll be receiving it with annual increases of 2.5%, the total state pension I can expect to receive is approximately £626,000. Now, when we subtract that from the target total pot, my new target becomes £507,000 for necessity and £1.3 million for comfort lifestyle. And we are still not done, because step 5, we still need to factor in our private pensions. Earlier, we calculated the projected value of my private pension to be around £184,190, which will be accessible from the age of 57 at the earliest. Once we account for that, it brings the final target pot down to £323,000 for necessity and £1.3 million for comfort. Now, these numbers are starting to look a lot more achievable now that we are factoring multiple income streams, but let's take a step back and see what this all means. What it's saying is, based on current projections, to become financially free by 50, I'd need just over £323,000 saved through other means to cover my necessity lifestyle, and for comfort, the number jumps to over 1.1 million. The money from this could come from savings, investments, or other assets, but that's just the ballpark I'll need. Now, these numbers are inflation adjusted to reflect what I need in the future, but in today's money, that works out to be around about £195,000 for necessity and £685,000 for comfort. This just gives you a clear idea of what that money might look like in present day terms. However, the key number we need to focus on is the inflation adjusted figure, because that represents the actual amount I'll need in the future to maintain this lifestyle. Of course, these numbers are still quite high and may feel unrealistic, but the beauty of this tool is that you can play around with different scenarios to see what changes.
For example, if I assume my mortgage or rent is paid off by 50 and remove the cost from the equation, the target drops drastically to around £102,000.
Of course, so play around with the tool and see what works for you. Again, doing this as early as possible is going to be extremely beneficial. If you identify any shortfalls, you can tackle them as early as possible and making that goal of financial freedom that more achievable. Also, the opposite may happen if you are really fortunate. You may find out that you are actually overly saving for your pension and that you can perhaps use some of that money elsewhere. Cool, so that is it for this week's video. I hope you find the tool really useful, and the link can be found to the tool in the description box down below. Let me know at which age you want to be financially free and what that means to you. And remember to like and subscribe. Bye. Pow.